All right, today we're gonna share with you one of our favorite holiday recipes. It is a dessert. It's cranberry gingersnap pie. We made it for the first time for the Florida Suncoast Airstream rally for Christmas, I guess 2021. And it was actually one of the first recipes that I ever cooked in the kitchen. And I think it may have been the first time that I used the convection oven. And so this recipe is great if you're just looking for another alternative to your traditional holiday pies. It's got a cranberry lemon curd, and then the crust, picture like a graham cracker crust, but it uses ginger snaps. So it just has that little bit of a spice. Anyway, it was a total hit. And we want to share with you how easy it is to make today. All right, first thing we gotta do is melt a half a stick of butter. This is what's gonna go in the pie crust. And since I'm using the microwave function for that, I need to do it first so that I can switch it to convection for the pie crust. So, got that going. Dealing with dough. All right, all good, didn't explode. Okay, so the convection oven is preheating right now to 350. For the pie crust, like I said, the base of it is ginger snaps, and then it also calls for walnuts, but since we're in Georgia, we figured we'd do some pecans instead. They both work fine with this recipe. So what we need to do is put this all in the food processor so we can get it all nice and crumbly, and then we're gonna bake it. So I'm gonna measure out the different ingredients. So we need 5 ounces of ginger snaps. Got a nice little handy OXO food scale that we use. Sometimes measuring things out by weight is just easier and more accurate. Here comes Rhett. He's like, I'm gonna get some. Okay, 5 ounces. These are a little bit harder, so we're gonna actually process them in the food processor on their own first. See if we can get this in one shot. All right, so next is the cup of pecans. Add that in. And then 3 tablespoons of brown sugar. And then we're just gonna process that again. It's struggling a little bit. All right, and the last thing to do is take the melted butter that we did. We're just gonna pour that in and process it really quick. And that's just gonna help bind it all together. Lightly grease the pan, just with some regular cooking spray. And then we're going to dump all of this in here. And we're going to work it out into a crust. But you can see how good it looks. It has like that kind of graham cracker texture to it, but the nuts add just a little bit more crunch to it. So just want to push it down and then just get it to work its way up the sides. All right, so this pie crust is ready to go in. The convection oven has preheated to 350, and so I'm just gonna put it on top of the wire rack and put it in. For those of you who are new to using your convection oven, when you use it, you wanna make sure you leave the glass turntable in there because that's gonna help turn it. But then you also need to use the wire rack because that's gonna keep it elevated so that when the oven's heating, it can all circulate around here. So the oven will beep at you once it's preheated. Then all you have to do is open it, put this in, program your time. For this, it's gonna be 10 minutes. So I'm just gonna pop it open, negotiate a dog. Go ahead and stick this in. And then I'm just gonna put in 2 minutes and start. Next is we're actually gonna make the cranberry curd for the center. So take a bag of cranberries. The first thing you do, because I have forgotten this before and it irritates me to no end, is actually to hold back a few of these that you're gonna use for garnish. I have made this entire recipe only to then realize that I didn't save any. I'm going to go run out and get some because the pie just doesn't look the same without all of this. Anyway, rest of this bag is gonna go in a saucepan. We're gonna add in a cup of sugar and then 1/4 cup of water. And then we're just gonna bring this up to a simmer. So the crust is done. Very carefully get this out. Whoops, don't eat that. Just took our crust out and we are just gonna let it sit over here to cool. The cranberries and the sugar mixture, this has been going for about 15 minutes and you can see it's just starting to, all the cranberries have burst. It's starting to get really thick. And so we're just gonna turn this off and let it start to cool a little bit before we puree it. So we're gonna go ahead and prep the rest of our ingredients that are gonna go in the actual filling. Okay, next up is lemon juice. And so this recipe calls for a half a cup of lemons. I don't know how many lemons I'm actually gonna need. You never know, sometimes they juice better than others. But we're gonna get these squeezed, then move on to the eggs. All right, let's see how much we got. I know this strainer looks like a bit of overkill, but I only have one. There's no sense in bringing multiple ones, and I need a bigger one for certain recipes. But it makes me feel better because we were actually going to use this strainer again for the curd. So, and I think I actually managed to get exactly what we need. All right, the other thing we need is eggs. Eggs can give pies that super silky, creamy feeling. And so it's gonna use 3 whole eggs and then 2 egg yolks. Whenever I'm cracking multiple eggs, I always crack it in one bowl first before I add it to my mixing bowl with everything else. You just never know if you're gonna get a bad egg, and you would hate to be in a position where you have now cracked a bad one into your recipe with everything else. So now that we've got our lemon juice, sugar, and eggs ready to go, we're gonna puree the cranberry mixture. We've let it cool for a little bit, so it's had some time to kind of thicken up. I use a stick blender for it. You could always throw it back in the food processor if you wanted to. This thing comes in handy when we're making soups, other dressings and stuff, so it actually doesn't take up that much space. So we're going to do this gently because it's hot and we don't want to get cranberry stuff flung all over the place. All right, so we are gonna turn this back on to plug it in. We're gonna bring this back up to a medium heat. You can see that I pureed it. I try to get it as smooth as possible. You might be wondering about like the skins and stuff like that. Try to get this as smooth as possible. We're still going to actually push the curd through a strainer before we put it into the pie crust, but we do want to try to get this as smooth as we can. So we're gonna go ahead and add our lemon juice, the rest of our sugar, so half a cup, and then our eggs. And we are going to whisk this all together over medium heat. Okay, so we're gonna let this cook for about 10 minutes on medium heat so it can start to thicken. We wanna keep stirring it. There's just a bunch of sugar in here, and so we don't want this to start to burn or anything. All right, we have let this go for about 10 minutes. It's getting to the point where it's like bubbling and it's flinging all over the place. So anyway, the next thing we're gonna do is, like I said, we're gonna use this strainer again. This is just to get it super, super smooth so it just looks like that really pretty gel when it's in the pie. So very carefully, we're gonna pour this through, and then we're gonna use the back of a spoon to just make sure we get it all pushed through. We just wanna try to just push it through the strainer, and it's gonna take a little bit, but you can already start to see, you know, it comes out just super smooth. All right, so you can see all of the kind of skins and everything that this got out, but we have pushed it through, and look at this. We've just got a really nice creamy curd. What I am gonna do is I am gonna scrape the bottom of this just with a clean spoon, just to get whatever's on the bottom off. Rat's trying to catch any that I drop. So yeah, look at that. Now, the next thing that we are going to do is one of the things that makes this uber kind of creamy, but also gives it just that really slick color, is we're gonna mix in some butter at the very end. And so we're gonna let it cool a little bit. but this is gonna take 4 tablespoons of room temp butter, and I'm just gonna go ahead and cut it into just some cubes because it'll be easier to get it to kind of dissolve in there and melt quicker. So we are ready. We let this cool for a little bit, and we're just gonna drop in each one of the cubes of butter, stir it around. This is still hot, so it's going to melt the butter. All the butter is now melted, so we are just gonna go ahead and pour this right into the pie crust. But you can already tell how pretty this pie ends up looking. Just the contrast with the colors, and then you'll see when we garnish it, it's just that much of a prettier pie. So just lightly jiggle it. And then, so this needs to cool for a couple hours before we garnish it. Pie has cooled down enough that we can go ahead and put it into the refrigerator. I'm actually gonna take the same rack that came with the convection oven to actually make more room in the fridge, because right now we've got like groceries, there's like meat marinating, there's other stuff. So there's no reason why you can't just make dual use of this. The one thing I'll say about putting this in the refrigerator, we're not gonna cover it just because otherwise it'll ruin that top glossy layer. But because there is the fats from the eggs and the butter in here, it can actually absorb some other flavors. So I definitely wouldn't put it into the refrigerator. If you have other things like a cut onion, things like that, it'll just soak that flavor into your pie, which would not go well. Anyway, the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and get things ready to garnish it. And so, like I said, save some of those cranberries from the very beginning. And we are just going to lightly wet them. We'll shake off some of that water. Just gonna put it into a bowl. And then we are just gonna sprinkle it with sugar and roll it around in that. This way they just look a little snowy. The dogs clearly think this is some sort of a treat. And then we're just gonna let those dry. And then once the pie is cool, we will top it. The pie has officially chilled, and so now we can go ahead and garnish it. I like to use thyme, but any sort of kind of woody looking herb, even like rosemary, I think that would look fine. It's truly just for garnish, just to kind of give it that Christmassy kind of feel. And then we'll just put a few of our sugared cranberries there. And that's it. Super easy, so good.